Hey everyone, now you might know if you've watched a few of my videos, I absolutely love finding out about little tips and tricks that not only make your life easier when flying, but also help you capture better footage with your drone. I'm never not playing about within the drone's menus or watching other channels, learning and taking the opportunity to potentially find out about settings or modes that I didn't know existed. So today I wanted to take my opportunity to share with you a few settings and modes along with some tips and tricks that I genuinely do think make the Mini 4 Pro even better. Now I have covered a few of these before in a previous video for the Mini 3 Pro, but seeing as we now have a newer model, I thought it was time for a refresher. Let's jump right in. Alright, let's take the drone off and take a look at tip number 1. Now this first tip makes use of cruise control. And if you don't know what cruise control is, it's a function on your drone that acts very much like the cruise control on your car. Now if you've never used it before, there is a setting you need to change first to be able to access this function. So tap the 3 white dots on the top of your controller screen, go to the control subheading, and then scroll down until you see the button customization option. Now in here you can customize what happens when you press either of the function buttons on the back of your controller, if you have the DJI RC2, or if you have the DJI RC-N2, that's the controller you attach your phone to, you can adjust what happens when you press that single function button on the front of the controller. Now we need to set one of these function buttons to the cruise control feature, and you do that by selecting either the C1 or C2 button and then select cruise control from this menu. And now if we go back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start flying this drone forward towards this little church, and then I'm going to press that function button. And now you can see aircraft and cruise control appear on the screen, and I have no fingers on the controller anymore, but it's still carrying on with that motion we set. Now you can stop the motion at any time by pressing the X on the left side of the screen. So that's how cruise control works. Now, when I first tried this feature, I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool, but I don't think I'll ever use it. How wrong I have been. I use this nearly every time I'm out flying now. And the reason for that is, lately I've grown a little tired of the traditional style tracking shots you can capture with a drone. I just find if you always have it flying along behind you, following along, all your shots can look very similar. So what I've started to do to try to make each shot more unique is introduce 2 directions of movement. I try to have the drone move in a different direction than I am traveling. Now you might think, that sounds great, but surely that requires someone else with you to pilot the drone, and normally that would be true. But actually, we can leverage this cruise control feature, which is very powerful, to be able to do this if we're out flying ourselves. Let me show you how. Okay, so let's say I want to capture a shot where the drone rises up in the air to reveal this church behind me, but I am going to walk along this path towards it. Well, we can't use active track to capture that style of clip, and let me show you why. So if I draw a tracking box over myself and select active track, and now start walking along this path, you can see instead of the drone staying in place and rising up in the air, it's following along behind me. And also, it's staying at a level altitude. And what that means is, for most of this clip, I'm actually blocking the view of this church. Now, this clip looks okay, but I think you'll agree it's not very exciting. So instead, let me show you how I would capture this clip using cruise control. To start, I'm going to put the drone a good bit lower to the ground. I want to try and conceal the church as much as possible. Then I'm going to get ready to start walking towards it, and I'm going to start slowly raising the drone in the air. And once I get the speed I like, I'm going to lock it in using that function button on the back of the controller to enable cruise control. And now I don't need to worry about the joysticks. My hands are off the controller. And I'm going to start walking along this path towards the church. And you can see we get this shot that is just so much more interesting. You can see the church in the background. You can see me walking along towards it. And I just think this shot shows off the landscape much better. Now this doesn't just work with the Mini 4 Pro. If you have a drone that has the cruise control function, I encourage you to use it to start to spice up your shots. Here's a few more examples. Here's a clip I captured with the DJI Neo using cruise control to have the drone fly backwards away from me as I climbed up this boulder field. Here's another example I captured using the Air 3S, using cruise control to have the drone automatically fly to the left as I walk along this snowy boardwalk. And finally, here's another clip I captured with the Mini 4 Pro. Again, using cruise control to have it rise up in the air to reveal the background as I walk away from the camera. Now, before we take a look at the next tip, I just wanted to quickly say, if you're getting value from this video, if you have learned something new, please let me know by giving me the thumbs up and clicking that like button down below. And if you love all things drones, but also action cameras, gimbals and more, and want to learn about the best settings to get up and running quickly, along with tips and tricks to help you get more cinematic videos and better looking images with your gear, then please consider clicking that subscribe button down below. And when you're down there, be sure to check the notification bell so that you will be alerted when my new videos are released. It would be greatly appreciated. Now, are you somebody like me who a lot of the time struggles to do smooth drone movements? I know on a day like today where my hands are absolutely freezing, if I wanted to get a nice orbit around this church, it would probably take me at least 10 attempts. I would either struggle to keep the subject centered, or the movement just wouldn't be smooth. There would be lots of little micro jitters. And taking that long to capture a single shot, trying it that amount of times, is just a waste of time and a waste of battery. But this is where spotlight mode comes in, because you can use spotlight mode to have the drone do a lot of the hard work for you. So let me show you how. First, you want to put your subject in the center of the screen, or whatever it is you want to do the drone move around. And here's another little top tip. If you struggle to know where the center of your frame is, tap the settings button on the top right of the controller screen, go to camera, and then I recommend you scroll down and turn on this center point grid line. And now if we go back to the main camera preview, you will see there is this crosshair, this little X superimposed on the center of the image. And this just makes it so easy to frame your subjects centrally. So once I have the church in the center of the frame, I'm just going to draw a tracking box over the top of it. And you want to make sure spotlight mode is selected on the bottom of the controller screen. Now here's the secret sauce. Before you do anything, you want to just move the drone around a little bit until you see that tracking box change to a position marker. It might take a few seconds, so I'm just flying it to the left here. There, it's just changed. You can now see it's a position marker instead of that tracking box. And the reason why you want to do this is the drone will fly around your subjects much smoother if you use that position marker. Now here's why spotlight mode is so useful. I'm now going to press the right joystick left, which would normally just make the drone fly to the left, but you can see instead of doing that, it's actually orbiting around the subject. And that's because spotlight mode will always keep your subject centered. So the drone is automatically rotating, assisting me in doing this drone move, and you can see it's super smooth. This is a beautiful shot. Okay, let's now do an orbit to the right. So I'm going to hit record, and instead of having to use two fingers to do two inputs on the controller like you normally would for an orbit, and it can be quite tricky to do, especially if you're a beginner, I'm just going to push the right joystick right. Now again, normally that would just make the drone fly to the right, but you can see the drone is doing this beautiful orbit around this subject. And again, you can see just how smooth it is. It doesn't matter how cold my hands are or how much I would normally struggle. Using this method, I always end up with super smooth shots. The best part is it doesn't just work for doing orbits. You can do any combination of any move you wish, and the drone will also automatically control the gimbal. So if I now push the left joystick up to make the drone rise up in the air, you can see at the same time it's automatically gimbaling down, giving us this epic rise up gimbal down move. And let me tell you, if you've ever tried to control the joysticks while controlling the gimbal scroll wheel on the back of the controller at the same time, you will know just how difficult that is. Now for one last example, let's say I want to do a drop down gimbal up. Again, all I have to do is pull that left joystick down and the drone will automatically gimbal up at the same time. And I think you'll agree, this has to be one of the easiest ways to get super smooth shots that you can do. Now, if you need inspiration for all the different types of drone moves you can do with the Mini 4 Pro, or like me, you struggle to remember all the different controller inputs you need to make for each individual move when out on location, then I recommend checking out my drone move cheat sheets. These contain easy instructions and reminders on how to do 45 different drone moves that you can either print out or download to your phone so that you always have them with you. These also include 3 pages of moves specifically for this spotlight trick, so that you can use it to your advantage to get super smooth movements when capturing footage with your drone. If you would like to find out more about these drone move cheat sheets or pick them up, I will put a link in the description down below where you can do just that. Okay, For my next tip, I recommend you use the radar compass. Now don't be alarmed if you don't know what that is. I'll admit, for the longest time I didn't even know this existed until one day I accidentally swiped from right to left on top of the mini-map and this entirely new view appeared. Now although this radar compass looks quite intimidating with all the different icons, I promise you once you understand what they all mean, you will realize you can get so much information from this little view. So I'm now going to give you a crash course on what everything on this radar compass is and does. So you will see this blue triangle in the center, and this represents the drone in the air. So currently everything is centered around the drone. Now you will also see a compass around the edge of this view. And if I rotate the drone left or right, you can see that compass rotates to show you the direction the drone is facing. So as you can see, we're currently facing west. Now you will also see this little yellow H icon, and this shows you where the home point is relative to the drone. So this is where the drone will return back to if you lose connection to it or the battery gets critically low, for example. You will also see this little blue circle, and this is where the controller is. So because you should be holding the controller where you are relative to the drone. Now as mentioned, this view is currently centered on the drone itself, but if I press this little icon here, you can see we have now centered the radar compass on the controller, and now you can see where the drone and home point is relative to where you're standing. And if you turn, you can see the compass will rotate to show you the direction you're facing. Now I personally prefer to have this centered on the drone, so I'm going to change that back by pressing that icon again. Now this little blue circle hides a secret that not many people know about, but it's an incredibly powerful feature. So right now you can see this circle is blue, but if I turn to face the drone, watch what happens. It changes to become green. Why did that just happen? What does this mean? Well, when this little icon is green, that signifies that you currently have the strongest transmission signal possible between the controller and the drone. So when flying at all times, you should try to face your drone to make sure this icon is green, to make sure you have a strong, reliable connection. Now cutting across the center of this radar compass is this blue line. And this is the thing I found most confusing to understand at the start. This is actually the horizon relative to the drone. So this will show you how much the drone is moving around if it's rolling or tilting in the air. Let me give you a demonstration. So if I start to fly the drone to the right, you will see that line has just tilted to the right. And this is showing you that the drone is now rolling right as it's flying. If I now start flying to the left, you can see that blue line has now tilted in the other direction. And again, this is now showing us that the drone is rolling left. Likewise, if I start to fly backwards, you can see that blue line dips down, and that is showing us that the drone is now pitched backwards in the air. And if I fly forwards, that blue line rises up, again to signify that the drone is now pitched forward in the air as it's flying forward. Now the reason why I think this blue line is so useful is because you can use it to see just how much the drone is moving around to compensate for the wind. So if it's a really windy day and the drone is moving around a lot, fighting the wind, trying to stay stable, you probably won't get the smoothest footage, but you might not recognize just how much the drone is moving in the air to compensate for that wind just by looking at it in the sky. But by looking at this blue line, you will be able to see, okay, the drone is actually moving around quite a lot. I'm probably not going to get the smoothest footage. Now, the last thing you will see in this radar compass will only start to show once you get close to obstacles. So as I fly close to this little building, you will see these new lines appear around the center. And this is showing us where them obstacles are that the drone is detecting relative to the drone. And the nice thing about these lines is they will actually change from orange to red as they get closer in proximity to your drone. Now the next tip that makes the Mini 4 Pro even better, and specifically the DJI RC2, is the fact that you can record audio directly to the screen recordings on this controller. So this will be really handy if you do tutorials just like me, as it means you don't need to record that audio to a separate source. Or maybe you want to make voice annotations as you're flying around. This will be really good for inspection work, for example. Or maybe you just want to vlog to your drone. Well, you can record the audio directly to the screen recording on the controller and then overlay this over the higher quality drone footage in your video editor after the fact. Now to do this, you will need a microphone with a USB-C connection. I'm going to be using the new DJI Mic Mini wireless system for this example, but any microphone with a USB-C connection will work. Now all you have to do is connect your microphone or if you're using a wireless system like me, the receiver, to the USB-C port on the bottom of the controller. And you want to make sure it's securely connected. You see, there's no way on the controller to tell if it's recognizing the microphone or the microphone receiver. So to make sure you don't end up recording lots of footage only to realize it was slightly loose the entire time and not actually recording that audio, before you start, just make sure it's securely fitted to the controller. And then all you have to do is start a screen recording by swiping down from the top of the controller screen and making sure record screen is selected, and then the audio will be recorded straight to that screen recording for you to use later. So what you're hearing right now is a sample audio recording, with the audio being recorded by the DJI Mini and the receiver plugged into the DJI RC2. And that audio is being stored directly to the screen recording on the controller. Now this next tip I only recently found out about, but since learning about it, I'm using it all the time. Now you probably already know that you can change what the two function buttons on the back of the controller do. So if you go to the settings menu, go to the control subheading, scroll down to button customization. In here where we set cruise control earlier, you can customize what them C1 and C2 buttons do. But did you know that you can also use these buttons in combination with the scroll wheel to change settings on the controller without having to touch the screen? If you scroll down in this menu, you can see we can customize what will happen if we press and hold either the C1 or C2 button while turning the scroll wheel. Now out of the box, this is set to adjust the shutter speed and ISO, and I have personally left these as default because I find this to be so useful. Let me show you what I mean. So I've just changed in to manual exposure mode, and as you can see, the ISO for this shot is slightly too high, so I'd like to lower it. Now normally I would have to tap into the settings on the bottom right of the controller screen and then adjust this ISO slider down. But if I want to just make a quick adjustment, I can do that without even taking my thumbs off the joysticks by pressing and holding the C2 button on the back of the controller and then moving the right scroll wheel to the left. And you can see by doing this, I'm lowering the ISO. And this also works for shutter speed. So again, instead of having to touch the screen, take my fingers off the joysticks, I can just press and hold that C1 button and again, move the right scroll wheel to the right. And this is now lowering that shutter speed. And I can also increase it if I wish by moving the scroll wheel the other way. And I've just found this to be so handy for making quick adjustments to the shutter speed and ISO when I'm flying without having to take my fingers off the joysticks. So there you have it, a few tips and tricks that in my opinion make the Mini 4 Pro even better. Now, are there any tips and tricks that you think improve this little drone? I would love to hear about them, so please let me know in the comments down below. Now before you go, if you liked this video and you learned something new, please let me know by giving me the thumbs up and clicking that like button down below. And if you love all things drones, but also action cameras, gimbals and more, and want to know how to get better images and more cinematic videos with your gear, then I recommend you check out my channel where I have a ton of other content to help you level up your game. And if you don't want to miss any of my upcoming videos, then please consider clicking that subscribe button down below. And when you're down there, be sure to check the notification bell so that you will be alerted when my new videos are released. It would be greatly appreciated. If you want to stick around and watch a few more now, here's a few I personally recommend. I'll not keep you back any further. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you over there.